Thank you all for being on the call. My name is Todd Kuckkahn. I'm with the Portage County Business Council. We're happy and excited to host this call today. I know we've got people from all over Portage County that are listening and watching on this, and we really appreciate that. The call, you are going to be muted throughout the call. With this many people, it's just difficult to have any sort of a conversation. But we do encourage you to submit questions in the chat box. And the chat box, the way we have it set up, will be viewed by the host of the meeting. That's us. And then we'll ask the questions of Craig and Meg and Cory after they chat a little bit about where the school district are at. So please post your questions in the chat box. Obviously, we reserve the right to edit those as well. I will also mention, I'm going to hit the record button right now, that we will be recording this call. So just so people know that. That's always a good thing to share. All right, the call is being recorded. So again, thanks again for being on the call. Let's see, what other things do I want to talk about on the call? Obviously, backgrounds. If you're on video, make sure your backgrounds are good. It's great to have children in the picture. We love to see kids on the call. That's great, and family members. Before I turn it over to Craig and Meg and Cory, I do want to just give you a little kind of kudos to the school district. They've been hosting regular calls, often weekly, at least every other week, with the community. And this has been going on for, I would say, months now, more than weeks. This has been going on for months now, getting input from the city, the village, county health, other nonprofits, other partners, the business council, businesses. So that, I think that says a lot about the school district and their interest to do this the best way possible. No one has the right answer. All we can do is have the best answer. And that's why they're doing these calls today. That's why they're doing, I think this is their 5th call today alone, sharing with the public what's going on in the schools. And a lot of the input's been very helpful along the way. And there'll be things that'll pop up in the next couple of weeks once school starts and for a long time. So we appreciate that. They've had also regular meetings with the Portage County Health, with Gary Garski, Ray Shabilsky, and the staff there. They've obviously been taxed, that staff, with handling this whole crisis. They've done a great job, and the school district has really done a great job as well, communicating with them, trying to figure out how to interpret some of these orders and rules and how to do the best thing possible for all the students. I would also say that there are nearly 1,000 employees in the school district, and all those employees have been working and thinking and trying to figure out solutions to this. The bus drivers have been, the people who make the meals every day, they've been working hard all summer as well. Administrative assistants, teachers, faculty, school board members, and lots of parents as well. So this has been a true community team effort. We all know how important the schools are for our children. I have a grandson in the schools, for our businesses, for our restaurants, for everything in this community. So they're an important part of that. And just want to pass along kudos to all of you. And representing the school district today is Craig Gerlach, who's a superintendent, Meg Erler, who's in the middle. Meg is the president of the school board, and Cory Hirsbrunner on the other side. She heads up the elementary education. She's the director, as well as she keeps Craig in line as, I don't know, associate or assistant superintendent, but has a lot of hats. So you're just seeing the leadership here. There's another 997 people behind them that have helped make all this happen. So with that, they didn't come here to hear me, they came here to hear you folks. So I'll turn it over to, I'm guessing Craig, to make a few comments. Again, please put questions in the chat box. I'm not seeing any right now. Kayla, I don't know if you are, but I'm not seeing any, but go ahead and proceed, Craig. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Todd, for the opportunity to provide information regarding the opening of schools to our community, and specifically to members of the business council that are watching. You'll notice I took my mask off as per Governor Evers' order requiring masks. Within the order, it provides for us as educators to take our masks off in the event that we are socially distancing, and we certainly are here in this room. So I'm going to take the liberty of doing so. We were here on July 7th, and we gave an overview, an in-depth overview, I should say, of our plan that the board then recently approved. And we now are in the implementation of that particular plan. I can tell you that we have The blessing, if I may, we have the authorization from Governor Evers to have local control on this particular issue and move forward with our plan. I think knowing with his decision as it relates to local control, what's happening in Portage County might be very different and is different than what's happening in Dane County. And of course, that could be very different than what's happening in Russ County. As Todd said, we also are in communication with not only our Tuesday meetings with Portage County. I'm on almost daily communications with either Ray Shabilsky or Gary Garski from Portage County as it relates to our plan and moving forward. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. So we feel comfortable where we're at. We've got support in terms of we have general support in terms of the direction that we're going. You can only imagine, however, we certainly aren't going to have the support of everyone because people have some very strong views on this. We're trying to make the very best decisions that we can, quite frankly, without the politics involved. We are looking at what's best for kids, what's best for our community, and we're relying on the county and the state to provide us most accurate information as it relates to the science of moving forward and not the politics. There has been a tremendous amount of planning put into this. Please note that we are following the guidelines of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, as well as the Department of Public Instruction. We've also have guidelines that we were given from the WIAA, Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Association, as well as my state association, which is WASDA, the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators. I'm in constant daily communication with many of my colleagues. Within that organization, there are 450 superintendents in the state of Wisconsin that serve as a resource for me as well. And probably the greatest resource that I have is the cabinet that I work with within the Stevens Point Area Public School District. We meet twice a week, Tuesday morning, Thursday morning officially, but I can say that our cabinet, which consists of 9 of us, have been working tirelessly since March to address the issue of what reopening school looks like. That said, we decided today, rather than have a formal presentation, as we did last night, we have a slide deck. We had over 200 community members, I would probably say parents, that were viewing our e-learning presentation last night. We have a meeting tonight at 5 o'clock for families pre-K through 6, a Q&A, and we'll be doing a presentation. We have over 400 people signed up for that. We'll be doing the same thing for secondary tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. So I'm saying that right now because what's going to happen is we're going to just generate some conversations rather than having a presentation. We're finding out that it's best to give an overview within this room and then allow you to ask questions, because we're finding out for us to move forward, questions that are coming up are invaluable. We have answers to most of them. We'll have some questions today that we may not have answers to. So it certainly helps us guide us as we continue to move forward. Our plan that was released and approved by the board in June offers phases from completely 100% face-to-face to completely 100% virtually as it relates to e-learning. At this particular point in time, we disclosed last week, and if your parents, you certainly would have received this information. The board also, within the approval of the policy, authorized myself to make the decisions where we begin school within the framework of the plan, and then how do we move through it, whether it be more students and more strength in terms of getting everyone into school, or potentially having to back off and possibly closing some schools. Elementary schools, pre-K 6, will begin school 4 days a week. They'll be face-to-face Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, Wednesday will be used for teacher prep and a deep clean of the building. I should have prefaced that by saying all of our students, all of our parents have the option of sending their children to a virtual program through an e-learning program that would be virtual. We'll say that probably several times. All parents have the option of sending their kids or not sending their children face-to-face and having them engage in e-learning. That said, we have approximately 10% of our students that have chosen that route up till now, or parents that chose that further, depending on the age of kids. And that Wednesday will be for teachers for prep time. Quite frankly, we need more prep time right now because we're asking teachers to prepare for face-to-face lessons. And we're also asking them to plan for that the same lesson virtually. So that is quite a task. That's not what teachers went to school for. This is new for all of us. So our teachers will be working as hard, if not harder, than they ever had in their careers. From the secondary level, we'll be beginning with a blended level, a blended model. Because of the size of SPASH, we have 1,500 kids. There's just right now too many kids in one building, so we're going to cut that in half. There'll be two cohorts, cohort A, B. Literally, we're separating A through L, M through Z, I believe. A through L will be going to school Monday and Tuesday. That's one cohort. Wednesday will again be an opportunity for teachers to prep for the following week, as well as an opportunity for our staff to do a deep clean within our buildings. And the other cohort, LZ, will be going to school Thursday, Friday. What that'll allow us to do at some given time, hopefully, as our goal is to get all kids back in school, if things go well, it'll allow us to take our two cohorts, put them back together into one classroom, and from a curricular standpoint, they'll be in the same place. Therein lies why our staff are also creating their lessons and their curriculum online to reflect the classroom. So those that are involved with e-learning and choose that quarter maybe to go back into the classroom, they would have been receiving the same delivery of curriculum when that happens. Of course, it could go the other way. We could go from blended and find out that we have to back off and go back into e-learning. And if that happens, our teachers will be ready as they've been preparing both virtually and in person. Cory, do you want to take off on what I said?
Yep, absolutely. So as part of our plan, we're going to have to limit visitors and parents into the building for obvious reasons. So because of that, our back to school nights, our open houses are going to look very different this year. So one way that we're going to address that is to do a gradual start to the school year so that we can slowly bring students back into the building and offer those students who have not had an opportunity to be at their new building a chance to be there without any other students that are normally in that building. So we are going to start bringing students back on September 8th, and we will only have 4K, kindergarten, 7th and 10th graders there on that day because they are entering a building that they've never been in before. Then on September 9th, which is a Wednesday, there will be no students physically in our buildings, and the secondary schools, grades 7 through 12, will be e-learning. Elementary students will not be e-learning that day because they will not have devices yet. Then Thursday, September 10th, we'll have a few more elementary students. We'll have 4K through grades 2. And then secondary will be grades 7 through 12, cohort B in person. And that means students with the last name of M through Z will be in person. And students with the last name of A through L will be e-learning. September 11th, we'll bring on a few more students. So we'll have all elementary students, 4K through 6, And then again, since it's a Friday, cohort B will be in person, and cohort A at the secondary level will be e-learning. Then the 14th of September, again, all elementary students will be there, and grades 7 through 12, cohort A will be in person for the first time. So that will allow us to gradually bring students back into the building. Starting on September 8th is a little bit later than normal, and that's because we think that it's really important for our staff to know and understand and learn all of the new safety protocols before bringing our students on board. So we need to have additional time at the beginning of the year to reboard our staff. They've not been there since March. So it's going to take a lot of time to reboard them back to our buildings, teach them all the new safety protocols, the expectations, get used to the new learning environment inside, which is going to look very different, to determine what pieces of furniture need to be taken out of our room so that we can appropriately distance students. And then to also start that preparation, collaboration, and planning for those e-learning lessons that are going to start taking place in the coming days. Families, I know, are anxious. Staff are anxious. It's really important for us to make sure that we're taking time for social emotional needs of everybody, of our staff, of our students, and looking to see if there might be families or might be students that are struggling, and how do we intervene and support those students and families right from the start, because a lot has happened and there's been a lot of anxiety and concerns over the last few months since we've been in the pandemic.
I also want to note that the slow start, in part, one of the aspects started with a question at our last meeting here, where one of the participants asked about how were those 7th graders and 10th graders going to orient to business, to back to school. And so we really want to encourage people to ask questions and to bring forward concerns you might have. We are committed to working with all sorts of families. We recognize that some of you may have students within your family who may have different names.
Right.
You may be in different cohorts, or you may have unique situations that what Cory and Craig have laid out for you just isn't going to work in the same general sense. And we really are committed to working with each and every family in this community to the best extent we can help support you and your students. We have some families, with respect to the e-learning, choosing to have all of their kids maybe be full online e-learning. We have some families choosing to have some of their children choose the e-learning, and some of the children to be face-to-face. And so we really encourage you to reach out to your principals, to Cory, to Craig, if you have specific questions that you feel that you need that help on, because part of that social emotional support Cory's talking about, I mean, it's for our students, it's for our staff, it's also for our parents. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the questions, I think. Yep.
Yeah, one of the questions was about teachers coming back. Students have the option of online or being in the classroom. How are teachers that may have special needs in terms of coming back in those environments, how are those being handled?
We are expecting that all of our staff return to work unless they have an underlying health condition. And currently we have identified 24, I believe 25 staff members that have contacted our HR department and have indicated that they cannot come back for a health condition, and we certainly are going to honor that. And we'll meet with those individuals on a, quite frankly, individual basis, because everyone's story is going to be different. That'll be handled through HR, knowing that we obviously are going to have a number of students right now, 675 students that will be involved with e-learning, and we'll need resources to address the issue of e-learning. So we know that we can simply, there isn't anything simple about this, but reassign a specific teacher to a group or a classroom of e-learning. And so we'll make accommodations for everyone that has a health and safety condition as it relates to COVID-19.
This call will be shared. We're recording it and we'll share it. There was a meeting last night. Is that call going to be posted as well? And people, I'm assuming
all of these meetings will be posted. There was one last night. Again, tomorrow's will be posted as well.
We'll get this to you as well. So all these meetings will be posted on the school district site. People are asking about, what are some of the criteria for going back to all online or this, I know that's a really impossible question to answer. It's kind of case by case.
As a state, we have local control. There are other states, Minnesota, for example, it's governed by the state. So they have their own metrics put into place, and the state will be determining what happens here. The difficult issue about local control, we all cry, I've been doing this for 35 years, and for 35 years I'm saying we want local control. There would be nice to have some guidance and some guidelines as it relates to what are the metrics, because I don't want to reduce this to a snowstorm or inclement weather. That said, I am responsible for closing school with inclement weather, and I do that by communicating with all of my neighbors and whatnot. But we do know that what's different in Milwaukee is different than Portage County. And when we have a snowstorm, what's different in the northern part of our school district and what's in the southern part of our school district is different. So when you take a look at metrics gets very complicated. The Portage County Health Department is working with their county associations, obviously, and they have their weekly meetings with the state. They are waiting and hopefully going to have some of those metrics so we can assist us in those decisions. But keep in mind, much of this will continue to be subjective because so much comes into this. A specific number or percentage is difficult to analyze or to use, but that's what people want. If our numbers if we have X amount of numbers in Portage County, we're going to close school or close a building. Where are the numbers coming from? Are they coming from Holman or Bancroft or Rocheldt or Stevens Point, or we want percentages? What percentage of our staff, for example, that would get COVID-19 would we look at and say we have to close school? That's difficult because we have small buildings, we have large buildings. So much comes into play. We will be monitoring that daily. We will be meeting as a cabinet daily. We will be meeting with Portage County, communicating, with Portage County Health Department daily to help us assist making those decisions. A number of issues that come into play, we focus on the classroom as we need to. Quite frankly, I'm as concerned, if not more concerned, about buses. We increased our bus routes. We're decreasing the number of kids on a bus. We used every one of our substitute drivers because we're adding drivers. We need substitute bus drivers. So a call out to anyone that has a CDL license, if you're interested in signing up to drive a bus, or to employers that might be listening to this. If you employ people that have their CDL and be interested in getting training through our school district to get certified to drive bus, that would be awesome. Because we're going to, if we can't get our kids to school, we have to go back to e-learning. If we can't feed our children, for example, if we have to close down a building, a cafeteria, a kitchen within a building, we can do that. Then there's another building that might get closed. We can do that too, and we can do prep at another building, and we can transport food. We're doing that all the time. We do that now. It depends what facilities, what kitchens might have to close. So the metrics on that's very difficult. What we are doing is trying to get a better idea how we can sustain everything. At what particular point in time do we have to change bus routes? in the event we have to, that it just takes too long to get to school, for example. One of our commitments as we move through this, what it addresses the ability of our staff. How can we sustain this from a staff level? What about parents? What is the parent? What are our parents' abilities to work through this? And of course, one is a school district. Financially, to what extent are we able to make decisions that affect us financially? We know that this is going to cost us more than it cost us at any probably given time in my history as a public educator, and we may have to rely on our fund balance, which we're very fortunate in this district to have, that we may have to lean on. And I'm just going, and I'm talking too much right now. And I was really going somewhere with all of that. But there's not a solution to that. If we can't get enough substitutes because there's a breakout in Wisconsin Rapids, and we all feed from the same substitute pool, thank you. So we could have a breakout in another district, and we may only have a few cases, but we can't get subs. So that's a very, very great question. One I wish I had a black and white answer for.
So I can speak in a general sense. We as a district are committed to safety and security for our kids. I mean, our students, that's bottom line one, and our staff. That is the priority of the plan that the board has proposed. Nothing has changed as a result of COVID. Our district, our administration is committed to making decisions in the now, where we are right now, with safety and security as the priority, in very close conversation with our public health, our local public health authorities in particular. If we were hearing anything from them as to the fact that the plans that we're currently proposing right now would not be safe for students or staff, we would be making a different decision right now. And as Craig said, and I think as we all know with respect to COVID, we're not going to know until the end of August or the beginning of September what's happening within our community. But we are committed to making decisions focused on safety and security, the flexibility to move within these modes of education, face-to-face, hybrid, and on e-learning, and then also to be able to provide to our community the best model of education, the best education experience we can to our students under the circumstances that are existing. And we recognize that that is going to, and that's why the board invested Craig with the ability to make those decisions, because they're going to be being made day by day and week by week as they currently are being made.
A big part of this is trust. We vote in a school board. The school board hires a superintendent, et cetera, and we have to pass the baton of trust to our school district. And our school employees have kids in schools, grandkids, whatever. So I think little editorial comment, but I think trusting that the right decision will be made at the right time with the best ability. Shifting a little bit, question about the Wednesday schedule, the virtual schedule. Will that be, will those students be working at their own pace, or will there be structured time for different classes? Can you get any more clarity to how that will work, Cory?
Yeah, so Wednesdays aren't going to be quite as structured as the other days. What we're primarily going to use Wednesdays for is more of practice, some extension activities, some enrichment activities, an opportunity for students if they have additional questions and concerns and need to contact, secondary teachers or elementary teachers. Teachers would also just be making individual contacts with kids. So it's not quite as structured as the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
There have been quite a few questions on testing and teachers related to IEPs and how those situations will be handled. Again, can you give us some insight on that?
Yep, I can speak to that. So within the coming days, and weeks, if you have a child with an IEP or a 504 plan, you should be getting contacted by your case manager. If you haven't and you're getting nervous about that, feel free, if you know who the case manager is, to go ahead and reach out to the school and ask for that individual, or contact the Student Services Department at Bliss. Each individual student's IEP will help direct what this will look like if your student is in a traditional classroom or if your student is in an e-learning environment. So again, it's really dependent on the needs. It's really dependent on what that IEP team determines is needed for that individual student based on their needs.
One question about job opportunities. What job opportunities are there for substitute teachers or assistants?
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Okay, all right. There are also some specific questions about busing and e-learning and cohorts and a lot of the specifics about when, where, who. I'm assuming that that'll be coming out to parents, and how are you going to be communicating those sorts of details with all these dates that were mentioned with the parents.
Yep, so there has been some information sent out already regarding the Gradual Start. So you can reference that on our website. We will continue to put more information on our website, and we will be emailing that information out to families. Bus routes, the transportation information will be coming from the transportation department directly. But again, if you've got questions, feel free to call there directly and they'll answer those questions.
Okay, let's say a student starts e-learning. They want to shift after a couple weeks, come to the classroom, or they start in the classroom, they want to shift to e-learning. What do we know about that right now?
Yep, so we've got two different kinds of e-learning that I'm just going to talk about quickly. We've got flexible e-learning, which means parents can make a decision at any point in time throughout the year if they want to be traditional or e-learning. But we're asking students and families to make those decisions by quarter. So if you decide right now you'd rather not send your children back in a traditional environment and you choose e-learning, we're asking that you stay there for at least the first quarter. And then if you want to come back, you can come back at second quarter. And we can continue that throughout the year. There's also e-learning that you can sign up for or opt into for the entire year. And right now we have about 75 families that have said, I've already made that decision, I'm going to do e-learning for the year. There's a form to fill out for that. That again is on our website. If you've already filled it out, you don't need to. If you haven't filled it out, please do so, and it will ask you which one of those options you're interested in.
Todd, just to add to that, there was another question as it relates to what about a decision that we have longer days, or when do we make a decision to bring the cohorts together or go to 5 days a week? We will monitor this and we will do that quarterly. Yep. Because our goal is to get our children back to school, and if we can at quarter, if it makes sense that we can go 5 days a week, we'll reevaluate that. But keep in mind, we know we're going to have families that aren't going to be interested in coming back. So concerned about that prep time, but our goal is to get children back to school as soon as we can in a safe environment.
The other reality is that if someone has chosen to go face-to-face, and then for some reason your family decides that you would prefer e-learning, you have the ability to do that at any point in time. The reason behind that, switching from e-learning into face-to-face, being restricted to quarters, is that one of the really important things that we're going to be doing between now and the beginning of bringing kids back into our buildings is really configuring each classroom for the size of that classroom and the whole distance, our ability to safely distance kids with COVID, and be really careful about that as we begin our school year. And that becomes very difficult if we're having students come in and out of that face-to-face experience. So if you and your family are really feeling at this point that you are more comfortable with e-learning over this, during this first quarter of the school year. That's really helpful information for our district to know, because it's going to be so important for us to know our numbers right now, and to be able to work with each of our principals, each of our classrooms, each of our teachers to create those really good cohorts of kids within our classrooms when we move into that start of the school year.
There's a number of questions about if there's a positive test here or there.
Yep.
And we've kind of addressed that in terms of not knowing each situation. You can't possibly figure out each situation what you're going to do in each
Well,
one.
we can say this: if there's a positive class test, let's say within a classroom, we will be working with Portage County Health as it relates to the contact tracing. And of course, Portage County has, I think, 4 or 5 criteria that will address that. As a classroom, let's say a teacher tests positive, we will then have to quarantine anyone within the building that had close contact. Now, we're trying to keep that classroom as a cohort for that reason. So we want to keep that 3rd grade class together as they move around the building, we're going to bring in the music, art. I mean, we're just going to really try and keep that group together to the extent we can for that reason. But there could be a situation where a student is in that classroom and they just weren't, they don't follow the contact tracing guidelines. But in general, if a teacher tests positive, generally speaking, that class will have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And therein lies the beginning of an issue, because if we have a small building, Jefferson Elementary, and you have 1 teacher, 1 classroom in quarantine, and you have 2, at what point in time do you have to shut a building down? Those are the metrics that people want to know. Well, SPASH is different. It's a larger building. So it's one of those things we're going to monitor, and we're going to monitor it heavily. We also need to take a look at what the numbers in the state are doing.
Also,
county, I mean.
Relatable to the business community, and I'm not going to speak for Gary Garsky, but he indicated, for example, within our business community, we could have a business that has maybe 2 or 3 positive cases in that business, and that would result in communication with Portage County, that business needing to shut down because of the reality of that business. We also could have many businesses within our community that might have 2 or 3 positive cases within that business. Again, in consultation with Portage County, that business would have to deep clean, but would potentially be able to reopen. And that's happening right now in our community. And it's really happening based on those conditions on the ground in consultation with public health. And really, again, geared to safety and security. So we see that for us as well, that as Craig said, it really depends on those specific circumstances. And I know it's the unique reality and the unique frustration and anxiety of COVID.
So there's a question about virtual learning. Virtual learning be live? Will it be recorded? And then in terms of students receiving laptops, Chromebooks, and all those who choose e-learning, how will that work?
Yep, so we will definitely give each family, or each student actually, a district device. And if families are having trouble with internet access, we do have some mobile hotspots available for families. So that will be taken care of. As far as recording of lessons, it will be both synchronous and asynchronous, which means synchronous lessons might be where there's a live stream, or the student is actually engaged in a lesson that the same students that are in a traditional classroom are involved in at the exact same time. Asynchronous would mean that it's recorded. E-learning will also include online activities, assignments posted to our learning management systems. So students would need to access Schoology or Seesaw to get those activities and lessons for the day. And then at the elementary level, we learned from families last year that parents were really interested in getting more hands-on, paper, pencil, workbook kind of activities. So we're gonna make sure that our families have access to some hands-on activities for kids, especially those younger learners.
And that was a question up there as well.
Good.
Craig, you mentioned you may have to close one of the third grade sections down because of it. So I'm assuming then those students and teacher would go to e-learning during that stretch,
Correct.
whatever that would be?
Correct.
Okay, all right. What's the protocol? Here's the $1 million question. What's the protocol when a kid may have similar symptoms of COVID, but may just have a common cold? I've heard a lot of rumors of 10 to 14 days off of school symptoms exist. How will that?
We're asking parents to monitor their children before they send them to school, and if they have symptoms, keep them home.
But if they come down with symptoms at school, kids are still going to get sick, and it's not necessarily COVID. So we'll be in close contact with families. Do they have allergies? Or is anyone else in your house not feeling well that maybe was tested but was negative? So if they're symptom-free for 24 hours, they can return back to school. Yeah. We're finding that there's not the availability of tests out there. So, if people come down with just a symptom or two here or there, they may not even be able to be tested.
Okay. If they have,
Portage County right now is they're inundated. I mean, they're stretched, and that's a concern across the state. Will be the ability to actually get testing. Okay. It could be another serious issue of how we move forward.
Sure.
Administration also brought forward to the board, not this month, but last month, a enhanced plan with respect to nursing support within our school buildings. So we are working to pull that into place as well. So we will be doing extensive professional development with respect to staff within the buildings to be able to identify, and if there is concern about symptoms, we are going to have self-isolation rooms within each of our buildings that we are going to be able to support that student, and then really take a look at determining whether there's a risk or a concern or whether not. But we recognize that we're going to have to be even more vigilant than we have in the past to watch out for kids and staff.
In terms of interaction with, if children are home and e-learning, parent involvement, any idea of knowing, obviously younger kids is going to need to be more involvement, but any idea of knowing how many hours or how actively involved if people are working both from home and work, and any sense of that? It's a tough question.
It is a tough question. The principals and I met this morning for 4 hours to work on this e-learning stuff, and we're going to be calling in our instructional leaders. We're going to come up with some guidelines and some expectations so that parents have somewhat of an idea. If I have a second grader, what is this really going to look like? If I have a kindergartner or a 4K student, what does this really look like? So we're in the process of creating some of those. It's not complete yet, so be looking for something to be sent to families or shared with families in the coming weeks.
And I'm not an educator, but Craig has said over and over and over again, as well as Cory, that our biggest concern with e-learning this spring when we were shut down, moving into the summer, is our little kids learning to read. It's so important. It's so fundamental. So I guess I'm just putting that plea out. Whatever, keep reading to your kids. Keep encouraging that aspect, because again, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to teach kids to read, and that's where we're seeing more importance for our little ones to be able to be face to face and to be able to work to grasp and be able to improve that skill.
There's a question about the calendar. I'm assuming the more normal the year is, the more normal the calendar will be. But any
Right.
sort of plans, holidays or going into summer, or it's just going to be kind of as needed?
School starts September 8th, Todd. That's what we're focusing on right
That's
now.
That sounds good. I understand that.
I'm anticipating the DPI is going to give us flexibility. They have to.
Sure.
So the calendar could be fluid. We'll communicate to the extent that we can. I'm just looking at, because we are getting a little bit shorter. I want to hit on these. Grading right now. We are grading. Did we mention that?
Nope.
We will be grading. This will not be a pass or a no credit type situation. So that's going to be difficult, especially for high school kids that are focusing on going to college. Self-isolation room. Every building will have a self-isolation room, which will look very much like our nursing room. If a student gets ill, they go to the office. They go into the nurse's office and they have their temperature. Maybe they lay down. Maybe they go back to class. Maybe they're waiting for mom. If in a situation where, or dad, excuse me, if this is a situation where they have COVID symptoms, there will be a room of isolation where that child will be supervised until the parent can pick them up.
I think another thing too that just came to mind, and I've heard this mentioned before, is that one of the advantages of the Stevens Point School District doing this is that the students, the children will be able to meet their teachers face to face, those that are going in school, which if you should have to go to all online, really means a lot in the teaching effort, that the students will know to some degree their teachers and their fellow classmates. So when you get on a Zoom call or have interactions, at least some familiarity there. We hope it continues obviously throughout the year, but
Right.
I think that's an advantage that sometimes isn't necessarily shared.
Relationship.
Any questions that you've asked that we haven't been able to get to today
I'm
will
saying
be answered.
one here that I think is fairly significant regarding face masks and face shields. The governor's order, unfortunately, at least from my perspective, does not allow us to use face shields. When we put our information a couple weeks ago, we indicated that we would be requiring all students and staff to wear face coverings, which would include the shield. The shields are less intrusive. You can see a teacher's face. However, the science behind it, the shield goes down to here and air droplets can go down below. So you can wear a shield, but you have to have a face mask on. I'm anticipating a shield that's going to come out with some type of beard, if I may, underneath. But I know they're out now, but they're extremely expensive. And we are requiring face masks for all staff and students unless they have a documented health condition.
There's a question about when do we find out what teacher our child will have. Be sometime before September 8th. I don't mean to be sarcastic, but as soon as you get all that worked out and scheduled, a lot of that information will be coming out over the next couple of weeks. There is a question about, you mentioned, the third graders you're going to try to keep in a classroom and cohorts, bring teachers in. SPASH is obviously a little bit different. What are the plans there in terms of building movement and keeping kids in rooms and all that?
Well, first and foremost, we're cutting the population in half. We are going to, a lot of details in terms of getting the staff in to help us out. We're having conversations. Do we have, lanes? You've got to stay on the right side, left side as we go through. We're going to socially distance to the extent we can. When we're in the classrooms, we'll be able to do that very, very well. But we have teenagers in hallways, and we can ask them to socially distance. Teenagers are teenagers too. There's boyfriends and girlfriends, and we all know what happens. So that's going to be a challenge. That said, the CDC guidelines indicate that if I have my mask on, I can be within 6 feet for up to 15 minutes. So in passing time, if our students have their masks on, they are socially distancing as per the guidelines. So it really does come down to the masks within the halls. And of course, we're going to stretch out our lunch hours to the extent that we can.
And the high school students it will be the more high school classes. I mean, students will be moving from class to class. Students will be selecting their classes as always, versus our elementaries where we have more of that ability to create that cohort within a classroom and have that be more of a static situation and be able to bring our educators into the room to support those classrooms. We also are very likely going to have students eating within classrooms. Again, to just be able to create, to be able to continue to support that cohort. Again, in the event there would be a positive case, have that smaller group of students and staff that might have been exposed.
I saw a couple questions about school supplies. Yes, students at the elementary level will need the same school supplies. And then there's always a question about how do we get those supplies into the buildings now, since we're not having back to school nights. You will be getting a communication from your building principal that will share how those supplies will be brought into the schools. We're talking about maybe some drive-by drop-offs and some other things. So again, that communication will come from your building principal shortly.
I saw a question about gaiters being ineffective. Does a gaiter constitute a face mask? Good question. We'll find that out. There was another question. If a student is staying home because they have COVID-like symptoms, but highly likely it's a cold, or for whatever reason they have to stay home, will we have access to e-learning? The answer to that is yes.
And the one other thing about masks, and this is Cory brought this up to me last week, and it just heightened for me the specifics that our administration as well as our staff are focusing in on as we move closer to the start of the summer. Project Fresh Start at United Way is putting out an appeal for masks for students, because we know that we're going to have students that forget them. We know that they're going to have families that struggle to be able to afford them. We know that students are going to show up without them. And so we encourage members of the community, if you are interested in supporting that effort, to do so. But we're asking for students the masks to have the ear parts on them, because what the plan is to look to have lanyards connected to the back of the ear parts so that students aren't taking masks off. They're merely slipping them down. And you know, that's like, I guess I wouldn't have even thought about it, but then when you think about it, that's so practical, because again, one of our concerns with students is they take the mask off, they lose the mask, they drop the mask, the whatever. But our ability to be able to have that mask secured, they can just drop it down and they can put it back up in the event they need to have that mask off. We also, if your student for a medical reason does not, a mask just is not, you know, a child is not able to do that. We encourage you to reach out to the district. We recognize that we have students who, because of health conditions, potentially some of our special needs students are going to struggle with masks, and we want to be able to work with families to help support, again, your student. Our mission is to prepare each student to be successful. We're committed to it to the extent that we can.
Lockers will be up to the secondary principals, and that's being discussed whether or not we'll use lockers. Another very good question regarding the transparency regarding the COVID cases. I'm reading into that question. Will we be notifying? Yes, we will. Keep in mind that we have there are strong HIPAA laws out there, and we can't. We got to be very, very careful that we're not violating individual rights. But we will be creating a dashboard for our district, and you'll have information very similar to going on the county health department. You need to know what's going on in our schools, and I get where that question is. If we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 teachers, I want to know that, because that might make a decision in terms of what I want to do as a parent.
Project Fresh Start supplies are going to be distributed through the schools this year. That's a change from previous years, and that's a really great question about 7th through 12th going off-ground lunches if needed. I guess we have an incredibly amazing new commons that due to the generosity of this community through our referendum that we have built. It is phenomenal. It fundamentally provides capacity for every single one of our students, especially because we'll, at least at the start of the school year, be having that population. I don't know the answer to that question.
Here's an example I just thought of too about the detail that all these folks are dealing with. The other day I was on a call and the conversations about floor fans versus pedestal fans versus ceiling fans versus HVAC. So I'm not trying to say that lightly, but just to share the level of detail that they're trying to deal with all the things that go on with what we're dealing with. Another question that came up, somebody got on late. Yes, this is recorded, and all the school district meetings that Craig and Meg and Cory are in, and others as well, are all going to be posted on the school district website. So we'll get this one up there as soon as we can in the next day or two, and so you'll be able to go back into these. We're also going to do the best job we can in terms of printing out the chat, getting the questions to the district again in case there's some things that weren't addressed. We had a lot of questions, a lot of great exchange. We appreciate it. I would say patience and trust are the two key words right now. The school district will get our information as soon as they can, as quickly as they can, and just be ready. The big word now we're all using, right, is pivot. Just be ready to pivot and pivot on the best decisions they can make. So Craig, Meg, and Cory, thanks so much.
So I'm wearing contacts today because I totally agree with the comment about glasses and how they clog up. Mayor Mike mentioned to us at a meeting last week that he's been going to Dive Point Scuba and buying the spray that you put on like scuba masks, and that has provided him with some relief in terms of the clogging of his glasses. So I guess that's an option that I'll throw out to all of us who have to wear glasses and deal with masks.
He also has stock in that company.
I
guess one other thing too, thinking of that, I don't know what made me think of, but I know the school district also has been working closely with the Boys and Girls Clubs and the YMCA in terms of all the issues with before, after, and
before
Wednesdays.
school, after school, what Wednesdays look like for those
right.
Parents that simply don't have access to child care.
Yeah. So go ahead, I'm going to wrap it up.
That's
Okay,
something that we're looking at.
So be patient, trust. Thanks everybody for being on, and are looking forward to September 8th. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.